I'm a Jungian trained analyst and have become very interested in all the homes of psychoanalytic thought, and this is why. I sit with my patients and I filter through my experience of what's happening with them, and does the theory hold in this situation, in this nuanced situation, over here, in the traumas of today's world, in the political situations, in the political realms, we are now one world, many countries together, many cultures influencing each other, deeply immersed in technological age. How does the method hold, and what method? There is no universal method. So, in which case, I am left to critically think for myself what it means to be a psychoanalyst. Did I learn that in training? I was lucky I did. I had two particular guides who really believed in the power of critical thinking, always in the analyst seat and in the world at large. And so I found that the psychoanalytical thought is sometimes useful, often it's not. Its founders are historic. They're historic gems: Freud, Hume, many others. And many of the contemporary thinkers, I engage deeply in contemporary psychoanalytic thought and sift and sort about to see what the thinking is about what we're doing that makes sense to me when I'm sitting there in the experience with my patient and as a person in the world. And when it doesn't hold, then I have to think about it and write about it. And that's what takes me to writing. That is the single most motivating factor about why I bother to write, because it's hard. It's a creative process. I don't know what the hell I'm saying half the time. But it engages me, and often I find I can get into new ground and then opens up to another unknown abyss, and I think that's just the way it is. However, and this is another critical point, and one of the things that drew me to Jung, two main things, is that he himself was an interdisciplinary seeker. He didn't just stay with Freud. He didn't just stay with himself either. He sought what other thinkers around the world, in the history of ideas and in the history of the world, had to say about what it means to be a human being, amongst others in the world, on the planet, and what it means to be a human being. He used the word self, so that's the context that I'm using it. What it means to be a human being within an animal nature, and so he, in his multidisciplinary approach, deeply, I can't say it any other way, it just appealed to me from the beginning. Not many of his conclusions, but that he was open to multidisciplinary thought. And then secondly, he was also open to multiple states of mind. He didn't even have to know what they were. He just believed they existed and that they held prominence. And so those are the two main areas that I think differentiate Jung as a psychoanalyst over anybody else, even today. So I also want to make another point. One of my main critiques of Jung is that in the history of his world, in the history of his time, and in his moment, many moments on the planet, the epistemology that he constructed to understand psychical experience did not include the work that was emerging in the philosophy of his time. Particularly, he didn't make the phenomenological move and then where that went. It wasn't because he was too old either, because Husserl and Heidegger were in between the world wars, propagating new ways of understanding what it means to be human. And Jung disavowed and even loathed and criticized, and without really thinking about it, critiqued Heidegger because he didn't understand. It was hardly a critique. He didn't understand what Heidegger was saying. I have to say, the first time I tried to read Heidegger, I threw Being in Times About This Big, and I threw it across the room. I didn't break anything, so I threw it again. And then I settled down. And do I understand the works? No, but as one of my mentors said, I halfway understand. I'm going to take that. So I'm not going to start or stop with Heidegger. My point is that Jung did not make the philosophical turn. It's really clear, amongst many scholars, this is not a new idea, that a lot of his thinking emerged from philosophical thought and experience. But it was the philosophy of his times, and we are in a new order now. There's never been a time like now. There are threads that are relevant to 100 years ago in the world that Freud and Jung emerged from, but we've never been in a time like now, and I've never been in these times like now. And they are my ancestors, Freud and Jung, but so are the philosophers, the contemporary thinkers, but mainly my patients are the teachers. They're the ones that bring me here, and even to you, to my audience, talking to you about what it is that keeps me in psychoanalytic thought. It is a field of depth psychology. We think deeply about what it means to be human, and we apply it. We bring philosophy to life. Philosophy, I feel tearful when I say that, philosophy lives in our work and through the humanity that can happen there, the struggle between animal, human, that dichotomy that isn't. We can't be one or the other. We're both. So that is a very simplistic but heartfelt description about my struggle to stay in the field of psychoanalysis. And now I want to move to the other area about the multidisciplinary hunger. It's like a greed for understanding about what other fields are thinking about what it means to be human in our world times. Philosophy I've already spoken to, and that's what the first realm of fascination and draw for me, curiosity. Anthropology, politics. My father was a political scientist. My mother was a nurse. The body, medicine. My son's becoming an epigeneticist and is also influencing me. He's in how to think through a scientific explanatory model of mind and being in a world amongst beings and non-being. Mathematics, medicine. So currently I'm writing that we cannot disavow neuroscience, nor can we reduce psychoanalysis to neuroscience or vice versa. We have to live and have dialogue and not fight or compete or struggle to think my world, my thinking about being human, it will become obsolete if I engage with what's happening in science. I become obsolete in my thinking about what I do in my life if I don't engage in what other minds are also thinking. And so neuroscience is for example, let's talk about attention deficit disorder. or cognitive behavioral therapy. I do use those therapies in psychoanalysis. I'm not very popular for that. I don't get very many referrals from psychoanalytic colleagues, except ones who've made the turn towards multidisciplinary understanding. It's a different kind of turn. It's not just philosophy. Some have made that turn, but we're talking a multidisciplinary engagement with the work of psychoanalysis. And my whole practice has changed. I made a political turn about 30 years ago. For my first 10 years of being a therapist, I was embedded in group psychotherapy, psychodrama, group psychotherapy, sociometry, and became a trainer, educator. And then I moved into depth psychology, and the later decades were engaging in the thinking about psychoanalysis. Now I'm returning to working more deeply with the collective, working with groups. And I'm not abandoning anything. As a sublation is moving with, bringing into, figuring out on my feet, working with sociodrama in the communities outside of the therapy world, inside of the psychoanalytic world, and boy, can we use it. Bringing in to thought, what is a communal world? What is a group? It's common knowledge that Freud and Jung didn't really have much to say that is very useful, or that's in today's world, that is applicable. And you go to any conference, we struggle to how to engage with each other in groups. I'm in a conference now, actually there's less struggle, people are warm, and the breakout groups are small. There's a hunger in the community to survive and to be useful and relevant, I think. And you see different kinds of people coming to, this is a Jungian Studies conference, I'm in it right now. Not just analysts and academics are here, although predominantly that's what drew me, but we're talking social activists are here, academics aside from psychoanalysis are here, people who are in analysis are here, designers are here. That's interesting me, and they are welcome. They are welcomed in the group, and I see them in all the activity. These individuals, and we talk. So this to me is a new direction, where we have conferences where anybody can come. Now the Lacanians have been doing this for a while. I'm also deeply influenced by Lacanian thought. Why? His model of the real makes more sense to me than the collective unconscious. I'm not going to get into that treatise here. I've written about it and will continue to write about it. But it's the idea of being not so segregated, more integrated, being exposed to new forms of thinking and being. And we are in South Africa right now, which is very disturbing. And I seek disturbing experiences, not because I'm a saint, but because I think another Jung was more interested in harmonious, integrating, overarching universals than he was the shadows that exist within those. In this conference, we're talking more about shadow and alterity, which pleases me a great amount. And so Jungian thought traditionally we talk about shadow, but there's a tendency to not really turn towards the most disturbing aspects of what it means to be a human on the planet. And there are exceptions now, because there are breakout groups in the in the Jungian world, where people are actually more deeply engaging with politics. It's okay to talk about politics with your patient. I've been working with my patients in groups, not just in the Trump year or months, but in the last decade, more and more, I have opened myself to the reality of what's happening. I also am a group I work with groups as well as individuals. When the patient individual or the patient in the group brings in their concerns about their political concerns or their cultural concerns, I take it seriously and I don't interpret it as through necessarily a psychoanalytic lens. That's not my first go-to anymore. I sit there and I listen, and I am generating new ways of thinking about how that affects and shapes what Jung called the self, the psyche, and ourselves in it, and our relationship to others in the world.